Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the first Steam Plant Demolition Community Advisory Group meeting. My name is Brian Daniels. I am the Assistant Vice President of Communications and Government Affairs for Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation. We appreciate everybody hopping on the call today, the agencies, the offices of the elected officials, and all the community groups that are joining us to discuss the process of demolishing the steam plant that is sitting behind me right now on the island. If you could just go to the next slide, Becky, we'll just outline the agenda quickly, and then we'll do some introductions. So first, we just want to make sure everybody on the call knows who each other is. We'll then go into our meeting goals and our formats. We'll go into construction report, current status, and look ahead from the agencies. And then we'll open it up to the Q&A, and we'll discuss when the next meeting will take place in July. With that, I'd like to first turn it over to the representatives from HPD. If they could just introduce themselves, that would be wonderful. Becky, I don't know if you have to unmute or if they can unmute themselves.
I believe they can unmute themselves, but if anyone's having trouble, let me know.
Okay. Should we start with Rachel?
Yeah, I'm Rachel Swack. I'm Director of State Government Affairs at HPD, and I'll pass it along to our Deputy Commissioner.
Hi, my name is Anne Marie Santiago. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Office of Enforcement and Neighborhood Services, and the demolition unit is in my office. Grace?
Sure. Hi, Grace Defina, Associate Commissioner for Emergency Operations and Enhanced Enforcement. David?
Yes, hi, my name is David Eskutz. I'm the Director of Demolition working under Grace.
Thank you all. Can we turn it over to DOB for introductions?
Hi, folks. Good morning. My name is Rosa Kelly. I am the Deputy Commissioner for External Affairs at DOB. I'll turn it over to our first Deputy Commissioner, Yigal.
Good morning, Yigal Shamash, First Deputy Commissioner here at DOB. Throw it over to Sonia.
Good morning, everyone. Sonia Gior, Chief of Staff here at DOB. I think that's all of us.
Great. And if I could then turn it over to the representatives for the elected officials' offices, we can start with Speaker Menon's office.
Thanks so much, Brian. Harry Gale here, the District Chief of Staff for Speaker Julie Menon. I'll pass it along to our Director of Constituent Services, Carolyn Rufkin.
Hi there, I'm Carolyn, Director of Constituent Services. I'll pass it along to Senator Kruger's office.
Hi there, oh, sorry, Sarah.
So sorry. Hi, I'm Sarah Hale-Stern. I'm Senator Kruger's Chief of Staff, and I'll turn it over to my colleague, Audrey.
Hi, I'm Audrey Tannen, Senator Kruger's District Office Director, and full disclosure, I'm also a resident of Roosevelt Island. And I will pass it over to our colleague and friend, Courtney, from Assembly Member Seawright's office.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Courtney Pharisee, Chief of Staff to Assembly Member Rebecca Seawright. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. And if we could then just go through our invited community group guests, I'll start with Frank Ferrance. Frank, you there?
Yes, Frank Ferrance, President of the Roosevelt Island Residents Association. I'm glad we're able to convene this community advisory group. I hope it's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And from the day nursery?
There's two of us here, but I'm the Education Director, Elizabeth Troisi, Education Director of Roosevelt Island Day Nursery. We are directly across from the steam plant, and we have children aged 12 months to 3 years old at our site. And Victoria?
Can we go to Jane Cornell?
Yeah, Jane Swanson, Cornell Tech.
Thank you. Can we go to the Older Adult Center, Lisa?
Hi, Lisa Fernandez, Roosevelt Island Older Adult Center.
Thank you, Lisa. Let's go to Disabled Association, Ben.
Thanks, Brian. Ben Falla, representing the Disabled Association.
Thanks, Ben. Let's go to RHRI.
Hi, my name is Kalin Krasnitsky, and I'm representing the Architectural Community Alliance of Roosevelt Island.
And let's go to Treba, Michael Hartman. I know you just joined. If you just unmute and introduce yourself.
Brian,
Yeah.
do you mind if I also introduce myself?
Oh, okay.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zora Boyajieva. I'm a director at ArcRai, licensed architect, and I'm also a mother that's raising her children on the island.
Thanks, Zora. Michael Hartman.
Hey, good morning, Michael Hartman representing Treba.
And we have just been joined by Ian McKnight from CB8. Ian, do you just want to come off mute, say hi? Ian, you there? Well, Ian's here, so we can move it along then. Becky, could we go? I don't know if I missed anybody. If I did, please raise your hand. But I think we got through everybody on the list here. Becky, if we could go to the next slide. So these are the membership groups that are represented on the call here today. We can go to the next slide again, Becky. So we just want to go over some quick ground rules and goals for the meetings, which is to maintain communication with agency partners and track the progress of demolition activities. We want to make sure that we are collaborating with Roosevelt Island partners and stakeholders to troubleshoot community issues due to the demolition work. We want to serve as a monthly information session to share progress and important milestones until the completion of the demolition. And we are recording these meetings for community sharing, and we will post them after the meeting concludes. I just want to go over very quickly the conduct on the call. This is a safe space to discuss the demolition work and address concerns. We want to make sure everybody is respectful and allowing others to speak without interruption. We are asking that folks pre-submit questions at least 2 business days prior to the meetings to make sure that the agenda moves along, and it gives the agencies time to make sure that they're getting the answers the community needs in advance of the actual meeting. And then just a reminder, it's not really a forum for discussing halting the demolition work or repurposing the building. This is really about how do we make sure that the demolition work is happening safely with folks on the island informed and aware of the different milestones that are coming down the pike. And so when we get to the Q&A section, we'll ask everybody on the call to remain muted. When we get to the Q&A, we'll just ask everybody to raise their hands if you'd like to speak. I want to make sure that we get through everybody that has questions first before we circle back with some folks. So just be mindful of that and just be mindful of everybody's time. And let's have a nice informative meeting. And with that, I believe we will turn it over to HPD to begin the next agenda item.
Great, thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm Anne Marie Santiago again. I'm joined by Grace Defina, David Eskowitz, and Rachel Swack, who all introduced themselves already. For this first meeting, I want to thank you again for inviting us to this CAG so that we can provide information to you. For the first meeting, I'm going to go over a little bit of background, some of which most of you may already know, but I'm assuming that some of the folks here have not been either to the April meeting we had or been involved in some of the previous discussions. So I just want to lay out some of the issues. I won't go through this every time, and we'll just give regular updates in the future. But I do want to level set for this first meeting. So if some of you have to hear this for the second or third time, I apologize in advance. So just as background, HPD has a demolition unit that we regularly have to deal with emergency demolitions and other demolitions throughout the city in response to Department of Buildings orders. With regards to the steam plant, An emergency work order was issued for a fence and other steps to keep the site safe. HPD complied with that order and also received an order for the demolition of the smokestacks and the building in regards to some structural concerns to the building. When we receive demolition orders from Department of Buildings, there is a long process that we normally go through, which includes, and included in this case, assessing the site, we walk through Department of Buildings to assess what needed to be done. We walk through with our vendors, identifying how we would go through this work. There's a contracting process that we have to do. There is some pre-work that we have to do at the site to make it ready. Our contractor is Statewide Capital, as many of you already know. We do have worked with this company before. They have qualifications to do both the demolition and the asbestos work at the site. We've met multiple times over the course of the past year, maybe a little more, with REOC. We've taken recommendations, attended a REOC's operations meeting in December of 2025, met in Roosevelt Island, myself, Grace, David, and Rachel, all attended at a community meeting again in April to provide an update and answer questions from the community. We also set up an email address for residents to be able to email us directly with questions they might have about what's happening there. Excuse me. Our role at this CAG, as you know, is to keep you all informed on next steps of the demolition process and answer your questions. I'm going to talk about several different work streams that are happening in progress, and then lay out what we know about what the future steps are going to be related to the demolition. So one of the steps that we've already done, and we did talk about this a lot in April, was to remove the oil tanks that had been identified at the site. So the oil tanks had been there at some previous time. They had been emptied and filled with foam. Some company many years ago had done this. HPD didn't do that. All of the tanks at this point have been removed from the site. During the tank removal, there was an odor in the soil. Statewide did have that soil tested. DEC, the State Department of Environmental Conservation, conducted an inspection, recommended additional precautions, including placing additional plastic sheeting to protect the site, and to clearly demarcate in the holes where the oil tanks had been removed, to clearly demarcate where new fill will go on top of that, so that in the future, when other environmental work is done there, when any redevelopment is done, folks know where the clean soil ends and the undersoil begins. DEC did attend that meeting in April and provided some more context around that, some more information. Since the April meeting, we've awarded the removal of the soil to Statewide, who hired an appropriately licensed subcontractor to safely remove the soil. Their subcontractors in the final stages of submitting a plan to DEC, which DEC will have to approve before that soil is removed. So they are currently actively going back and forth on that plan. Once that plan is approved, we can let you know when that work will begin. So there will be, between the approval and the actual removal of any soil, there will be some other pre-steps that need to be taken before that happens. So we should have time to let you know that that will be happening. The contractor will, again, remove the contaminated soil, backfill with clean fill. We will have air monitoring during that time period to make sure that there's nothing released into the air above what would be expected to be in the air before that time. We expect that whole process, once it starts, to take about 3 to 4 weeks once we have the final approval. So that should take us through, assuming that approval comes relatively soon, hopefully by the end of July, that work will be completed. We will be doing, I referenced some air monitoring. That's something called community air monitoring. It's referred to as CAMP, CAMP. So if I use that term, you'll understand what it is. What it is it involves monitors that are placed approximately in the area to constantly measure, and this is new to me, so total organic vapors and dust. These organic chemicals in the air get measured. If they go beyond the level that's acceptable, the work will stop. So as soon as that happens, it's not a test that has to be sent away and come back. This is a real-time monitoring. If pollution spikes above the background average, then contractors have to stop the work and apply mitigation or dust suppression methods. And so we can, advise if that should happen, that we've done that we've shut the site, and that when work will resume. As we've been doing, or as statewide has been doing for all of the truck traffic on the island, statewide will continue to coordinate with REAC on transportation issues. All of the debris, not just this debris, but any other debris that we're removing from the island is removed right now on trucks that are capped and sealed. So there shouldn't be nothing blowing off the top of the truck, nothing blowing out of the truck as it makes its way off the island. Once that soil removal and backfill work is complete, the scaffolding will happen around the stacks. So that's really one of the reasons we had to remove the oil tanks, backfill and secure that area, is to make sure that the scaffolding can go up for the demolition of the stacks. So that's really the background and up-to-date information on the soil removal. I'm going to talk about asbestos a little bit. I know that's also a concern for folks. So asbestos is very tightly controlled even in the case of emergency demolitions, and we work closely with our partners at the city's Department of Environmental Protection. Our contractor statewide, as I said at the top, is qualified to do not just the demolition with appropriate licenses and certifications, but to do asbestos removal. There is a third-party monitor that HPD hired, not just in this case, but in all demolitions where asbestos is involved, to do air monitoring related to asbestos. And so that's something that we normally do. We know how to do. Our contractors are aware that we're doing it. Before we selected the contractor, we had to do testing for asbestos, and that again is a standard work practice for demolitions, assuming there's access to the location. There was no asbestos in the smokestacks. Asbestos remediation had been completed at this site at some previous time. So there are some areas of the building where asbestos remediation was already done, and we don't need to do those areas. But there was asbestos identified in certain areas of the building, and so asbestos remediation was included in our scope of work when we awarded the contract to the demolition contractor. So at this time, as of now, third-party asbestos air monitoring has been ongoing since abatement work began on May 18th. We've provided reports on a weekly basis to REAC, and I believe those reports are being shared on their website. Thus far, testing has shown no evidence of airborne asbestos. Air monitoring will occur outside the abatement area and near the entrance to the abatement area. There are negative air machines that are there to ensure that any airborne dust is kept within the work area and is addressed. And near the negative machines are also near the barriers that isolate the area from the surrounding areas. So There is abatement required, I think, on almost every floor. Abatement that was part of the scope of work has been completed in the basement. Overall, this is about 30% of the work associated with what we believe had to be done for asbestos. Make ready work, which is clearing the area, making it ready for the actual asbestos abatement, was in progress on the first floor of the site, meaning we're removing non-asbestos debris from the site, preparing to do the other work there. Last week on Thursday, DEP came to the site for routine inspection. When they did their inspection, they identified materials in additional areas of the building that they believe require asbestos remediation. So at this point, we did a walkthrough. Once they identified that for us, we did a walkthrough with them Monday. They asked us to do some additional testing, which we took samples Monday, and we're having those samples analyzed now. A stop work order is in effect from DEP until such time as we complete that testing, and then we submit to them any new areas that we believe need to be remediated. We need to update our filings with them, so we're going to be in the process of doing that today and over the next few days. These actions between us and DEP, we're working very carefully with them and very closely. We met with them again yesterday to kind of go over any other recommendations they had for us about making sure that this is a safe and secure site. We expect the asbestos abatement work and monitoring to continue for another 3 to 4 months. So the soil, again, should be done hopefully by the end of July, but the asbestos is a longer project, was expected to be a longer project, and we continue to work on that in the building. We're going to continue, again, to meet also with DEP over the course of time, do periodic joint walkthroughs to make sure that we're all on the same page about how things are progressing. We will continue to send those air monitoring reports to REOC for the extent of this, the whole period of this work. As asbestos is removed, as I said, for the soil, it is securely trucked to an appropriate location for disposal. It's stored in a sealed line container until such time as that happens. So we have the soil, we have the asbestos. Air quality in general has been something that has come up consistently as we've talked with both REOC and the community about the site. We were asked to do camp monitoring. Again, I talked about that a little bit earlier in general, and we've agreed to do that once the demolition starts. And again, we will advise you when the demolition itself is going to be starting, which is now at least some months away. So just prior to the start of the demolition, we're going to do or our contractor, we're not going to do it, our contractor will do an initial preliminary monitoring, and this is not the demolition contractor, this is a third-party contractor who does the air monitoring on contract with us to ensure consistent air levels with the baseline. So they'll do a little bit before the demolition starts, see what the baseline is, and then do their testing daily to make sure that we're still within that baseline. The monitoring locations will probably change as the demolition moves along to be sure that they're in the area where the work is ongoing. Again, if camp results indicate any level of airborne contaminants above the expected thresholds, work is going to be suspended immediately until the source is addressed and levels return to normal. We will provide those reports as we're doing for the asbestos reports on a weekly basis. And again, all debris leaving the site will be capped and covered to be trucked off the island. So talking about trucking again, or traffic, or debris removal. So statewide, it has been and will continue to coordinate closely with REOC to minimize disruptions. I don't know if folks, want to talk about that later today. I think from discussions with REAC that is working out, and they are statewide is being cooperative in terms of trying to minimize the disruption. At this point, it is likely that we'll be able to barge some amount of debris off the island. I think conversations are still happening with both REAC and the ferry about how that would work, where that would be from, what type of debris can be barged. Not all type of debris can be barged. But as we develop that plan, as statewide develops that plan in coordination with those partners, we can bring you more up to speed on that. And we probably won't have that plan until we're closer to the actual demolition, which, as I already said, is a couple of months away still. So to just talk about demolition for a few minutes. So statewide has already implemented some of the required site protection that would be required by the DOB code, including tramway roof protection, sidewalk shed installation to protect nearby pedestrian walkways, and typeboard fence installation. We still have to do, or statewide still has to do, as I mentioned, the scaffold around the stacks, the timing of which is dependent on the soil. All of these protective measures and the demolition itself all have to be filed with the Department of Buildings. And again, statewide is still working on submitting those plans and getting DOB approval. Because of the soil and the asbestos work and the arrangements around the barging, there's no definitive timeline set for the start of the demolition of the stacks or the building. But we will provide that to you as we move along in this process and we get definitive timelines. The camp, as I said, will start before the demolition starts. So all of this work that has to be done is being appropriately filed with the appropriate agencies. As I said, DEP filings are required, DOB filings are required, DEC filings are required. All of that is just a back and forth with the contractor and those governing agencies. Excuse me. I talked about the soil already. Okay, I think I covered most of our talking points here. I do want to say that the team who's on this call, at least one of us will be on future meetings. With the summer coming, people are out. We'll try to make the best of having either myself or Associate Commissioner DeFina on one of the calls. David can provide backup information. We do try to look at your questions in advance of the meeting, but certainly REAC knows how to reach Rachel. And there is that public-facing email. If any of you had an immediate question, I want to reiterate that we understand our responsibility to protect the health and safety of the community. And that's the case for all demolitions that we do. Conversations about, and it was mentioned before, right? Future development is not part of this. HPD is not our unit. The demolition unit is solely focused on the demolition of the building and the stacks and any related work. We are committed to doing this work safely and as quickly as we can. We know there are other plans for the island. You have other work that needs to be done. So we're not trying to hold that work up either. But we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to ask your questions and share your concerns. Any questions we can't answer today, we will try to circle back before the next meeting. Rachel or Grace, or anything I left out that you had us scheduled to cover?
No.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Anne Marie. Appreciate the background. We can move along then to Q&A now. I know some of the questions that came in already were just addressed by Anne Marie, but I would ask anybody who has a question if you could use the raise hand button at the top. We will go through and start doing folks one at a time. Just be mindful again, we want to make sure that everybody who wants to ask a question can ask a question. So we'll get going with that. I do want to just say from the perspective of the CAG itself, there were some questions about its formation. This is very much in line with other community advisory groups that have happened across the city. The parameters, the cadence, we sort of modeled it after a lot of other ones that we've seen before. We did hear the feedback about CB8 being involved, and we did invite Ian along to join as a result of that. And we are again recording this, and so we will have it available as well for dissemination after the fact. But I will start. We will go through the questions now. Let me start with. I'll start with Zora. We unmute Zora.
Hi, hello again. I have a question about the premise of this demolition. On December 2nd, we have been told by HPD that the reason for the demolition of the building is structural emergency. Now that this question is out of the way, we know 7 months later that there's no structural emergency associated with this building. As a member of the public and a taxpayer, I would like to know why is this building being demolished, and what feasibility study has been done to determine that this building cannot be reused for the benefit of Roosevelt Island residents and beyond. So far, we have been asking for 7 months the same question. Share with us the feasibility study. I would like to, as a licensed architect, I would like to describe a little bit what I know about the building very quickly. It's an industrial building, very strong, with very strong bones, very strong foundations, built in the 30s and later in the 50s. It can be extended vertically and horizontally. It contains tons and tons of concrete and tons of steel structure, which is likely very easily repairable. The building can be extended vertically and horizontally and can be turned into a useful facility. Its location is prime from real estate point of view. And I, as somebody that's specializing in adaptive reuse, I cannot come up with a good reason for this building to be good practical reason, unless I see the numbers, unless I see that it's impossible, unfeasible. This building cannot bring revenue to New York. It cannot bring revenue to the city. So can somebody here please ask this very, very simple question? Why are taxpayers' money used for this building to be demolished at this point, and whether we can see the feasibility study that the due diligence that has been done to determine that this building needs to be demolished, causing so much difficulties for the residents of the island. Only for the site to be redeveloped later on, and the same amount of concrete and steel be brought back in an extended construction process. Thank you.
If DOB wants to touch on it, they can. I do want to reiterate, though, that the point of the meeting here today is to not sort of go over again whether or not this project is warranted. It's about how this project can be done safely. So.
Yeah, but Brian, it's a very simple question, right? And it's a public building. So I think the public has the right to know.
I think the building has largely been found to be unsafe.
Brian, there's no point to repeat this because now we know there is no structural emergency.
Okay, I understand. With that, let me go to Ben.
Thanks, Bryant. And one is I also want to thank Commissioner Anne Marie Santiago. I think like your presentation, that was the most informative that I think we've had since this project started. And I know I appreciate it. I'm sure many of us do. I share Zora's kind of like question of if it's not an emergency, what is it? But I'll move on from that because I know that's not the point of this meeting. You mentioned in a few points that were really interesting, and I'm incredibly grateful for them. You mentioned that camp will be added into the monitoring, which sounds incredible. If you could touch upon how the results of the air monitoring would be shared with the community. Would it be live? Would it be through REOC? Will you have like processes in place if air quality goes down? What will the automatic procedures take place? If you could touch upon that. And the second point, and if you can't touch it now, I totally understand. Judy Birdie mentioned to me a while back ago that originally the steam plant received their oil through old dock stations. So the oil came through the water, from what I understand. As part of the work, have you guys reviewed the old dock to see if there's any oil there or if there's anything that needs to be mitigated there as well as part of this project, or is that going to be left for a future endeavor? So those are my two questions, and thank you so much again. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone in the community will as well once they see these recordings.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. So yes, the camp reports will be shared with REOC for sharing with the community. We plan to do that on a weekly basis. If the results in real time require the work to stop, that will happen. And we will include, that information when we send over the report. When the site was shut down. We will try to include some details for you there about when the site was reopened and work started again. The oil through the dock, anything not having to do with the site itself or the buildings themselves are not part of our scope of work. So I would imagine that if there's other environmental assessment to be done, that will be done as part of whatever redevelopment plan happens for the site. Again, I can't really speak to that since we're not, HPD demolition will not be involved in that at all. But I'm sure that there will be future conversations around what needs to be included when and if I assume the site will be developed at some point in time.
Thank you, Ben. And I just dropped in the chat the steam plant page on the REOC website, which is where the documents are uploaded with the air monitoring reports. You scroll down to the bottom of the page there, you can find them there. Let's go to Frank.
Hi, thank you. I'm Frank Ferentz. I've lived here I'm president of the Resident Association. I've lived here for 46 years, and I've been on the Resident Association for the past 30 years, and we've been involved in some other things in the past, including the Goldwater hospital demolition, which actually bears a lot of similarity here. I just want to make 4 points which I've made, which I think, I know the commissioner has made a couple of them. I just want to signal support or alignment with them. So number one, safety is the most important thing. Whatever that is, immediate safety, long-term safety, that's the most important thing. Number two is that transparency is very important in the sense of having assurance of safety and compliance. So when we have transparency, then people can see into the decision-making process. I encourage you, I don't have any authority, but I encourage you to provide the documents that the community has been requesting. We don't have to go through the FOIL process and stuff. I think there are some requests from some community representatives and organizations that have been reasonable. If we can provide that documentation, Brian has already said REOC has a page for that. That seems to be a common point on that. That's great. Third point out of 4 is the environmental aspect. You've mentioned stuff is being sealed and trucked. That's great. We also have a concern about, as we get to maybe some of the heavy demolition, is that our roadways really suffer from that. And we have a critical piece of infrastructure, which is the helix That's that circular ramp, which has, once that's broken, everything is stops on the island here, and that has suffered in the past, and they've already done some work. So as much as you can barge or use some method like that, they did that with the Goldwater demolition. I just want to say, since we were involved in the Goldwater demolition in terms of air quality monitoring, we helped sort of broker, or be part of the arrangement between Roosevelt Island Community Coalition and Cornell on that. And we were able to bring in some outside air monitors, as in the people that do the community air survey for the city here. I just want to say that the process that you propose is similar to the process that we had in the past, in the sense of weekly reports. I assume there's going to be real-time, monitoring. My recollection in that is that there were a couple of hiccups. I say hiccups, like as in you get an alert, something's out of range. My recollection was on the order of 5 times, that a handful of times over the period. So that's sort of what I'm expecting here. And then they took an immediate remediation or action in terms of response. So all of that was fine. I will point out to everyone here in the community, one of the things that we got from Queens College on that is we actually have a lot of background air pollution here. So our 2 main sources of air pollution are from the bridge, which is 110,000 vehicles every day, and the FDR. And so if you're thinking of perfect air here, there's air quality monitoring, sort of this, you're sitting right below one of the main sources of air pollution here, and you understand that as background, levels. I'm just saying, we've looked into this. We understand that's part of that. And it seems like we had PAL Environmental Engineering here to do that before. This sounds similar to that. So I'm saying, based on that experience so far, it seems to be we're using, the right approach and what's appropriate, for that, including asbestos and such. And then the last point I want to say, which I know some others have mentioned here, is that, so I'm a systems engineer, and one of the things we talk about is open and closed system. In Manhattan, we typically take an open systems approach, which is if there's a building going to be demolished and there's a discussion with the community, we look at that, but that doesn't affect the bus service that we're getting or the park service in the parks nearby. For REAC, though, and Roosevelt Island, I should say, particular, it can affect us. So the repurposing of the building can have some effect. That's not part of this discussion here, but I just want to say that I know there's community interest for a variety of reasons. I'm saying from a long-term planning perspective here is that whatever plans we have for the building, whether it's to keep it in place and repurpose it or to demolish it and reuse the space in some other place, it has to make financial sense for the community long term. I'm not going to get into that. I just want to say that that's a key element, because if it's not, that ultimately has a long-term effect. I'll discuss that outside this meeting. I'll just say RERA Planning Committee meeting, which many of you received the notice, has a meeting tonight. That's a public meeting that we do at the third Wednesday of the month. It'll be at 8 p.m. I'll just send it out. I see some new people, which I hadn't, communicated to here, but you're all welcome to attend that. And that's an open discussion where we'll look at more of the planning issues here, which I know are outside the scope of this. And I look forward, Brian, you mentioned cadence. Hopefully this is a monthly meeting. Third Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. hopefully is a good time, because I think once you get a regular schedule, then I think then we can look forward to that, plan for that in terms of questions, and also, have a monthly cycle of, reporting and questioning, and hopefully that works better for the community and all the parties involved on that. And then the other aspects, what we do with the building or not, that's out of scope, and we're not weighing in on that, other than to say it needs to make long-term sense for the planning of Roosevelt Island, not just a building in isolation. And that can have many outcomes. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you, Frank, for your comments. Specifically in response to your concerns about the helix, that was something that, REOC raised to us right from the beginning. And I think, again, our contractor is working hard with the REOC staff to make sure that the roadway and the traffic situation is monitored and works for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That is really, really critical. Thank you for paying attention to that and addressing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And you read my mind about the third Wednesday in every month. I think that's what we're probably thinking moving forward, which would bring us to July 15th on the next meeting, but we can discuss that at the end. Let me go to Elizabeth.
Hi, thank you for having me and having the day nursery in this discussion. I just wanted to check in to make sure that since we are pretty much directly across from the steam plant, we just want to make sure that the children will be able to use our playground, that the children will be safe on the playground, to make sure what's being set in place regarding when the steam plant starts coming down. So like I said, we are directly across from the tram, so we're right there. So if you can share any bit of information. Again, we have very, very young children. So we have infants, toddlers, and young preschool age children.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think as we get closer to the actual demolition, we can circle back with you on that and talk more specifically about, your concerns and the times of the demolition and what what the process is. So we're still a little bit far out from that. As I said, we're still doing kind of interior to the building, asbestos removal, we're doing soil. But I hear your concerns about the demolition and having the children outside. So we can circle back with you at that time.
Okay, thank you very much, Emery, and thank you again for including us in the discussion.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Let's go to Lisa.
Hi, Lisa Fernandez again from the Roosevelt Island Older Adult Center. So I have a question and I have a comment. So, and I have to say I'm late to knowing about. I mean, I know it's been happening, but to be involved and to ask questions. So if I'm asking a question that's been answered before, sorry. I'm curious, who's paying for this?
So I think, and we can go back and verify, I believe that money is coming to us through the state, from the
Okay.
state eventually. It gets funneled through the city and there's, so like
Okay.
there's some middle managers there. But I believe it's state funding.
And will whoever uses the land afterwards, which I assume will be David Kramer because he seems to have the monopoly on Roosevelt Island for construction, will he be required to contribute to the cost of this?
So we don't really have any knowledge about what's going to happen next. Our role is purely involved with the demolition at this time, but certainly, the redevelopment concerns, I think, should at this time be directed to REOC and your community to discuss internally. But it's not something that's not a question that I can answer.
And I'm sure Bryant can answer that as we move on. But one of my concerns is, and I think Frank also touched on this, is the asbestos removal and other building material removals and the soil removal as it goes is trucked through the community. I'm concerned about older adults who have a compromised immune system or compromised breathing. And as far as notifying the community when it's being removed, beyond just a REOC email blast, which I know reaches many, many people. We also have an email blast that reaches several hundred, not thousands like the REOC email blast. And my suggestion is that maybe notify the buildings as well. So when trucks are going to be coming through with the materials, that the buildings can also let their tenants know, their residents, that this is going to be happening at this time. Just so people are aware. If you have a compromised breathing, compromised immune system, you might want to stay in when the asbestos is being removed. So it's more just a shared thought than a question. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate that. Just going back to your other point about the site, what ends up happening there, there's no definitive plan about what happens to that site. The thought is the city and state were planning to do a planning study, just sort of looking holistically about the future of Roosevelt Island and, you know, what if more people were added to the island, what that would mean and what that would entail and things like that. But that study hasn't started yet, and so we're not there's really nothing planned yet for the site. We're coming up on time, so I just want to see if anybody from a group who hasn't asked a question yet would like to, before I start circling back on some groups that have already raised their hands. Okay. Yeah, we'll go to Kaylin.
Hi, first, I want to say thank you to everyone that's part of this meeting and everyone that helped for this meeting to happen. We really appreciate the fact that we can sit together and discuss what's really best for Roosevelt Island and for its residents. So, Brian, a question before I go ahead. Are we going to have a couple of minutes to go at the end or later to go over some of previous questions, some statements? If I understand correctly, we're going to have this time, so I can concentrate now just on my direct questions to Anne-Marie. Is this correct?
Yeah, if you could direct the questions now. I know people have some hard stops coming up, so.
All right, so we can discuss the rest later. So several questions. Anne-Marie, thank you again for joining us and talking to the community for a second time. And thank you for joining us on April 15th. It was very helpful, but we still have questions that are unanswered from April 15th, and specifically several comments about what you mentioned already today. So talking about the clean soil versus contaminated soil, yes, we've seen that there is a red fabric demarcating the transition, but also even now, if you go and take a look at the backyard, you can see that a huge portion of the backyard, it still shows the exposed contaminated soil. It's clearly visible where this red demarcation layer ends, and there is a big chunk of the backyard, maybe a quarter, no, less than a quarter, but it's a big one, that it's exposed. So we have exposed contaminated soil. And then that leads to the other question about the asbestos abatement and safety measures that you're taking. It's great that you're measuring the asbestos for the workers. This is a requirement by OSHA. But we don't see any measurements for the community. We don't understand, is there any reason there is no camp implemented at the moment with air quality measurements around the site? Because even if you measure the air next to the work areas, that doesn't guarantee that the air around that goes to the community is clean. So this is another question that I have. And also, I mean, you can see just walking by, the building has broken glass, windows are open. Someone attempted to put a plastic sheet on the top windows. We can see that they're gone. They crumbled at the bottom. So it's a major concern, this asbestos contamination and the lack of community air monitoring plan. Going to the next concern, talking about contaminants. You just answer to the question of Elizabeth from our IDN about her concern about the infants and toddlers, that it's too early to think about it. So are you sure, can you tell us as parents and people living, we spend 24 hours on this island. So can you assure us that there is nothing to worry at the moment? This contaminated soil that's piled in the back and the portion of contaminated soil that's not covered, and regular, at least 3 documented so far, rain water, contaminated water runoff going outside on the street, and the dust that is released from the work, it's not exposing the kids and the residents. Have you done any soil testing on the firefighters field? Can you share the soil testing that you have so far? What about, let me just add two more points and I'll let you answer. What about lead contamination? There is no safe level of lead in kids' body. So have you done any testing for lead contamination? This body is from 1939 and it was painted with lead containing paint all the way to the early 60s, 70s because it's industrial site. So have you done any testing? What kind of measures are implemented at the moment to make sure that when you're cutting and torching metal pieces, the paint is not pulverized and doesn't go through the broken windows outside and it's not going into the firefighter field or into the RIDN classrooms? Have you done any testing? And then the last point about safety and the kids, because I agree with Frank, this is the most urgent thing. Everything else is secondary. What about demolition of the smokestacks? Have you done any additional testing, not just for asbestos, but also for contaminant residue on the interior of the smokestacks? These smokestacks have been working for 75 years, burning oil number 6, and usually there is a residue with containing heavy metals and all other type of contaminants. Do you have measurements that you can share with us?
All right, Caitlin, let's let Anne Marie answer, and then that'll be the last question because we're going to run over time here.
Yeah, I'll take the soil and the asbestos questions for now, and then maybe we can continue next time with the other questions because I do have a hard stop. On the soil, as you know, and as we talked about at the April meeting, DEC has been working closely with us, and we've been following the recommendations they've made in terms of covering the soil that was removed, removed from the pits, that is still on site waiting for permanent removal, and anything else that they ask us to do. Certainly, we will make every effort to comply with their recommendations, even if they're not required. In terms of the mesh, again, that was a recommendation that they gave us, the netting that is in the pits that's going to serve as that demarcation line. They requested that, and it was done quickly by our vendor almost immediately when they requested it. So as I mentioned in my original kind of talking points, we are waiting for DEC to sign off on the more permanent removal plan. And as soon as that is done, we will move swiftly and quickly to remove the soil from the site. We will do so in trucks that are made to remove, contaminated materials, make sure that those trucks are covered. They will be decontaminated as we move through the island to make sure that we are taking every step we can in order to reduce any potential problem there. On the asbestos, very similarly, where we are doing the testing for the asbestos air monitoring is what is required by law, what is in coordination with DEP recommendations. We will include, increase monitoring if it's requested to do so. We're very happy to do that. I believe the monitoring is happening in close proximity to the area where work is ongoing. And I think that is where the concern is that the asbestos fibers will be disturbed and where there's a potential for contamination. And there are very, very strict rules around asbestos and asbestos containment, not just for the workers, but for the community at large. And so we will continue to be working with our partners who are the prime experts on these topics But again, especially in the realm of asbestos, we do have experience. Our contractor has experience with doing this. So we're happy to keep you informed at each meeting about the status of those things, to continue to provide the reports and to provide the new camp reports once we start the soil remediation, to make sure that we are doing everything we can that's required, but even above that, to make the site safe. So I do have to go. I know you need to still talk about next steps for the CAG. I appreciate meeting all of you, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.
I'm
Thank
very
you.
sorry for
Yes.
just one follow-up. Thank you again for the additional information about the contaminated soil piles in the back and the asbestos, but you didn't answer the important questions about lead contamination, soil testing outside of the site, and testing of the interior of the chimneys and how you're going to protect us. My question
Right,
is,
and we're not going to be doing any work on those sites between now and the next meeting, so I'm happy to cover them in more detail at the next meeting.
Yeah,
But thank
Daniels,
you.
can I be heard just a second? Anne Marie, before you leave, I
Yes.
apologize. I couldn't make the meeting at the beginning, so I probably missed a lot. But I am the operator owner of the Racket Club, and I want you to be cognizant of the fact that the Racket Club is not only adjacent to the site that's being demolished, but we operate with air-supported structures. So every second we are blowing the air into the bubbles to keep them up, and everyone's breathing that air. So I wanted you to be sure you understood that.
Thank you, Louis. I appreciate that.
Skip, Anne
And
Marie has
again,
to jump.
we're
but
doing everything we can to monitor that air once
No,
we start disturbing
I
the
appreciate and
situation.
I agree with what Frank Francen's nice summary of what's important. And I know I don't probably everything's been said, but everyone hasn't said it yet. But but thank you
Skip.
for focusing.
Thank
on it.
you.
Thanks, Skip, and we'll talk offline about connecting you with the vendor a little more. I know Anne Marie has to jump, so before we get going, I know we went over a little bit of time. I just want to make sure that we are okay for the next meeting, looking at July 15th, 10 a.m. same time. And again, this is the beginning of the dialogue, not the end. So you have the RI demolition email where you can send follow-up questions there. That'll be reviewed by the agencies. And, hopefully we'll have a little more detail on some of the things that just weren't touched on today. But again, I want to thank everybody for hopping on this call. I think it was informative and a good start to this dialogue. And I hope everybody has a lovely summer. I probably will not see you at the next couple of meetings, but we will continue to do what we
Brian?
can to facilitate a conversation.
Is this the end of the meeting, or
What's
do you
that?
do you understand that this is the end of the meeting, or?
That's the end of today's meeting, yes.
So, I mean, we didn't cover even a quarter of the really important questions. I just asked a couple of minutes ago if we're going to have a moment to share our opinion, our position, to go over some open questions. And my understanding was that, yes, we are going to have this time. I mean, the first most important, if we're going to have these short meetings in which we can't even share our opinions and have a meaningful conversation, and if they're going to be once a month, I don't see any benefits of these meetings. The first question, can we have these meetings once a week? The demolition is ongoing. None of the questions have been answered. We have sent on Friday 12 questions. We haven't received an answer on a single one of them. And we haven't received, we're not even able to read our questions now, and there is no one to answer them. So if we're going to have this meeting, let's work together and make them meaningful. Otherwise, it's waste of everybody's time. So
I
first
think
question,
those
can we have
questions
these
can be
meetings
followed
once a
up.
week?
We will get answers to the questions that haven't been addressed in this meeting, and we will continue with the cadence that we have discussed, which is in line with other community advisory group meetings that are in effect across the city. But again, you have ample opportunity to reach out to the agencies that are doing this work, and we can address things in between the meetings. We can address them at the meetings. But this is, yes, this is the start of the dialogue, and I do think there's value in it. And I think it was helpful to a lot of folks on this call, but we have to be cognizant of everybody else's time here and their availability. And so that's why we are going to end the meeting here today at this point. But again, follow-up questions and emails can still be received by the RI Demolition email address. And we will make sure to have additional information at each subsequent meeting.
So, Brad,
With
how long
that-
it will take for us to receive answers, if I may ask? Because we keep sending emails and we keep not receiving answers.
Well,
This
we
is not
can
the first
work on
time we're
that.
sending emails.
And we will talk with the agencies and we'll see what we can do. But a lot of the information we're trying to share on this call here today, which was the
So-
point of the call.
And Brian, is RIOC making this decision that the meetings are going to be only once a month? Who
This
made
was
this
a
decision?
decision that was done in coordination with the elected officials' offices. All
Okay.
of the agencies agreed to it. So it's a total team effort.
So
here.
let's continue the conversation after this meeting. Hopefully we can agree and get a new meeting next week. I hope so.
All right. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you very much. We appreciate the participation.